Welcome back to Consider This. I'm Melisa, Idris, with me, Sharaad, Kuttan. Now, last weekend, various major cities around the world held a global climate strike to protest climate change. Now, Malaysia was not left out. We had one here, a protest here in KL. Now, at the forefront of the Malaysian chapter is Klima Action Malaysia, or better known as KAMY. And today on the show, we have the co-founders of KAMY. We have Nadiah, Dzulfakar, as well as Nurul, Fitrah, Marican. Welcome to the show, guys. So tell us a little bit in terms of now that it's been slightly more than a week that it has happened. What's the purpose of having that? You know, you wanted to be part of the global campaign to protest climate change. What was the response like here in Malaysia for that strike?
Okay, first of all, this strike is not our first strike. We've already planned and organized 3 other strikes prior to this, and this particular global climate strike, we call it as a My Climate Strike, is the culmination of all these previous strikes, all these actions, the workshops we've been doing, the documentary screening, and solidarity actions with communities, and that is the culmination of those activities. And this is like basically the grand finale of all of this campaign that we call as Oops Darurat Iklim.
Okay.
Yeah. So the response was massive. We were slightly taken back with there's a lot of how do I say engagement from other communities as well. For example, we have Zero Waste Malaysia coming in and saying, hey, we would like to join you.
That's an NGO.
Yes, it's an NGO. We have NGOs coming in, communities coming in, the communities that we have engaged before. For example, the Orang Asli community in Gua Musang have came down, from their villages.
So the haze didn't impact people's turnout of this strike, right?
Absolutely not.
Because it was like the peak of the haze where everyone was with the masks.
I think it roused people more. Yeah.
Yes, oh, okay. Because that gave some people.
Okay, I do want to ask you. Yeah, Fitrah, help me understand some of the kind of assertions that were made at the gathering. There were banners that read, "There is no planet B," or plantations are not real forests, system change, not climate change. Let's start with that. System change, not climate change. It's a big assertion. What is it that you think it means?
To me, like what we are not trying to change the world. We are trying to see the local context of what is happening in Malaysia. Like, for example, usually when we heard the story of climate change, it would be the story of like carbon emission, that sort of thing. But when there is like banner saying that ladang hutan bukan hutan, that sort of thing, which is like we want to bring the local context to the story of climate change in Malaysia, because we don't really have that story of global south made known to the public.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that you've had the strike and you've had these conversations, the idea of kind of localizing the protests to give it a Malaysian flavor, Malaysian context, what were some of the conversations that came out of this? So you had, all the other NGOs now part of this. What were the conversations that you've seen happen throughout the week following this, or has it kind of just dissipated following the end of the strike?
Oh. And end of the haze.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not today. The hazes seem to have come back today, but okay.
Yes. No, actually the conversation has been continuous, and we are really glad because of that. We're still getting messages and engagement from other communities asking, when's the next climate strike? What is your next action and things like that. I think it's really important to highlight this, that we are basically not the only groups that is pushing for the climate agenda in Malaysia. There are other groups as well. We have the SETDEM, we have the Malaysian Youth Delegation doing things as well at the policy level, but we are moving at the grassroots level. We are talking with the communities. We want to empower the communities to push to overturn this lack of political, I would say, will in Malaysia in addressing issue of climate crisis.
So this seems to me that it's very youth-led, right? Youth-centric. Has that been the case? Did you see, the composition of the people who turned up for the strike, the people who are engaged and talking about it, and perhaps pushing for more action? Has this predominantly been youth-centric? Fitrah, what do you think?
I think it has been like very youth-centric, but also like to highlight that it is very privileged community.
Like so very urban.
Urban story. It's either you are urban community or you are the community that are directly affected by this climate crisis. Like for example, the fishermen, and then the orang asli, and also we have like people like the farmers. But then you don't really see like the below middle class people getting into in touch with this climate stories yet.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's partly because the way how climate science is being communicated in Malaysia. First of all, issues of climate crisis has always been the domain of the English, language, and we don't have a lot of materials in Bahasa Malaysia. I think that is one of our, I would say, strategy so far to disseminate all this information in Bahasa Melayu, and also to use tools like art. To engage people through art when we talk about something so broad like climate crisis. Yeah.
Right. You use the word darurat, which is a word that, at least in the Malaysian context, we only refer to in terms of 1948 and that darurat, right? So the emergency, which was a political nature. Now you're saying that you wanted, one of the demands you made, and you were quoted, Nadiah, in The Diplomat, saying that you want the government to declare this a climate emergency. Have you gotten a response from the government? Are they willing to do that? And what would be their response if they did in fact declare such an emergency?
So far, we have not managed to get any response from the government, which is really quite depressing and destitute as well. But we are determined to go through with this. We are planning for our second phase of action, which is to plan for a citizens' assembly, whereby it's a platform whereby you have other stakeholders in the public and also companies that can come in and sit down and discuss about the climate crisis and come up with solutions that we can present to the government. I think the government has a, how do I say, there has been a lot of action. I'm not saying that the government is not doing anything. They've been talking a lot about a lot of issues like, the plastic pollution. Like yesterday, they just made an announcement about the liberalization of the electricity in Malaysia. I think they've been doing a lot of good job, but that being said, the climate issue is a really, really broad issue.
So with KAMY, the NGO that you both founded, what is it that you want, kind of concrete requests to the government? What is it that you're asking for specifically?
I think the thing that we want the government to do is to give to listen to the scientists or this environmental lobbyists that has been doing groundwork for longer than us. I think they have been there for a lot of time, for longer than us, and they have been, how do I say, lack of engagement by the government to this side. And there's been a strong lobbyist coming from these corporations that run at thrives in this capitalist economy. And I think this is something that we want the government to understand, that.
Well, you don't want it to be business as usual.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Can we cut
Some
that?
kind of change. All right, so we're going to come back and continue this conversation with the good folks from KAMY right here on Consider This. Stay tuned.